it.
Exactly.
Even if it's never used in the analysis later. And I'd rather just leave out some sentence that isn't used.
Well, the reason it's not necessarily typed up again is because, you know, in the real bar exam, you're trying to save time, so you can reference it above. If you have to, reference that question for the second answer, or that rule for the second answer, you can say, as stated above for answer number 1, we're going to reuse that answer for section number, or for the second question, right? So that's what I've always done, and it's proven successful rather than having to explain myself over again. Do you have
I think maybe the question is a little bit different. You're saying that the sample answer is including a lot of rules in the rule statement that are not directly applicable to the problem, and that it does not apply in the application. Okay, yeah, so I totally agree with, like, you can say, see rule above if you're applying the same rule to the second call of a question. Yeah, perfectly good. So this thing about too much rule in the Themis rule statements, and you know, thank God you're not on Barbary, because Barbary is much worse than Themis when it comes to this. They tend to be over-inclusive. And what I suggest that you all do, if you haven't already started doing this, is from time to time, especially when you think a rule statement in Themis was way more than you would put into your own rule statement, check the answers that we have in our essay bank. We don't have an answer for every essay that's been on the bar exam, but we do for most, and those answers were written by people who actually took the bar exam when that question was on. And I think that what you're gonna find is that their rule statements are more restrictive, kind of like the rule statement that you wanna write. Now, I think that on the bar exam, this is me talking, that you wanna have the rule statement that directly answers the question, plus a little bit more to show that, yeah, you understand the context of this rule, and it's not, you didn't just get lucky on this one question and happen to know that one little rule that slots in there. You know generally what you're talking about, right? So the real question, the real rule that you're applying in, say, an evidence essay, it might be a hearsay rule, and a very limited hearsay rule, and a hearsay exception, let's say. Well, you might still start with relevancy, then drill down to hearsay, what is hearsay, and then you get down to the applicable exception. And I think that's the kind of detail that you want to have in your rule statement, as opposed to jumping directly to the, I don't know, let's say the dying declaration hearsay exception, right? So you're showing that you actually know what you're talking about. You didn't just get lucky because you know what the dying declaration exception is. All right, but that's still a fairly restrained rule statement. Remember that we're balancing showing that we actually know enough to be lawyers versus writing a complete answer in 30 minutes. So you've got to be relatively restrained. The Themis answers, like I said, are better than the Barbary answers in that they don't have everything, including the kitchen sink, that you could possibly talk about that nobody could write in 30 minutes. But they do tend to be a little bit over-inclusive, I think. So periodically, check your answer against the answers that we have in the bank. And what most people who do that realize is, oh, there's no way I could write that Themis answer. But yeah, I can do at least as good as this person who presumably passed the bar exam. Okay, that's my, sorry.
No, that's
long answer,
exactly.
simple question, but.
Because I would have never known about that bank that y'all have on your end. So I would definitely agree with that statement and using Themis, but also using all the resources you have available to you. So although Themis is the course you've chosen to use, supplement that material with that bank and compare and contrast the answers between the two. I would agree with that 100%. Yep.
You said, for example, people finish the 20 essays that are marked by a human person. Can they get more essays marked?
Yes, so if y'all are wanting more graded essays, so 20 essays is specifically to the LLM program that a lot of students are using. But also for the JD program, we have 8 essays for you. If you want more essays, I can provide them to, it's only on Fridays that we do the graded essays as y'all have noticed. So if you want more, send me an email. I'll write my email up here so y'all can contact me directly. Sorry, my handwriting is atrocious. But I do have a funny spelling name.
I'm sorry, is that only for, do you mark MPTs as well, or?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so we can add to that as well.
Set apply for JDs too. JDs. And is that in addition to the
U-grader essays?
That is in addition, yeah.
Maybe you can talk
So
a little bit
those-
about U-grader.
So U-grader, that's on your time as you see fit, and those grades come back to you quickly through AI, which we also try to, or we incorporate human grading into that as well, right? So it's not just the tech grading your essays. So with U-grader, you're able to go in, answer the questions, and receive a grade, and that's in addition to those 8 essays that you already have that's on a weekly basis. Yep.
It's more of a general bar question.
Yeah.
But I know the MPT grade test on like grammar, does the MEE take off points if we spell things wrong, like typos, grammar mistakes?
You may be able to provide more exact information on this, but I have not seen that. I know it's not necessarily, they don't want that in there, but I don't think they deduct points for that.
I agree. On the MEE, it can be pretty messy, and as long as it's understandable, comprehensible, then you'll get the points.
Yep.
I just wanna reiterate, for the actual bar exam, we won't have our MEEs allotted 30 minutes each, it's just gonna be the entire time block, right?
So that's with MEEs and with the NPTs. And Texas is NPT in the morning. So it's 90 and 90. You get 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, so 30 minutes of 6. That's on you to determine how much time you spend on each essay. Me and Ben here were talking, and if you know more information, or if you know the precise information on one essay, you can fill that out. But if you don't know, a rule, or it's kind of in the back of your mind, you just can't grasp it right at that moment, maybe you pass that and come back to it later and go to the essays that you know more about. So that's where you would allocate your time more to the stuff to where you can get more points and come up, kind of recover from that essay that you might not know everything about. Would you want to add anything to that?
No, that sounds right. So one of the goals of today's practice exam was to force you to do 3 essays back to back, so that you get a feel of what the time allocation is gonna feel like. And it may be, for some of you, it happens to most people at this stage, is didn't have enough time for that last essay because you spent too much time on the first 2, right? Happens a lot. So now is the time to start thinking about how are you gonna allocate your time. And my suggestion is just do 30 minutes per essay. That should be going in. Some of the essays will be easier than others, some will take more time, some will take less time. But going in, you should plan to have a hard stop at 30 minutes for each essay, so that you don't run out of time on those last 2 or that last one.
And I would even add to that, and building on, Themis allows you to go over that allotted time frame of 30 minutes. With each practice essay, not even the graded essays, the practice essays, I would try to, get your mind in a framework of, I have 30 minutes to do this. If it takes me 25 minutes to complete an evidence essay, orienting myself to maybe 35 minutes on a contracts essay, but trying to do it in 30 flat. Because contracts, typically, you have a lot more rules and a lot more nuances. So, what's up?
For the MEE, do they print out the essays on the actual exam, or is it on the laptop?
So for me, it was printed out in Mississippi.
It will be here too. You get a booklet with all the essay questions in it, and you'll type your answers on it.
And you also get note paperwork, or blank paperwork or notes. Sorry, I messed up. Yeah, got it. Scratch paper, that's what it's called. What's up?
Does the bar have a timer running the way we can see it in Themis?
Yes. From my experience, it did. I don't know how it is here.
The Texas BLE promises that there will be a clock visible from every seat in the room. What they don't promise is what's gonna be on that clock. Is it gonna be actual time? Is it gonna be a countdown clock? Is it gonna be a count up clock? But there will be some clock. You can't take your watch, right? You cannot take a watch into the test room. And I don't believe there is a timer on your screen when you're typing the essays. It's the big clock up in the room.
So for me, it was a countdown clock, and it was like a game scoreboard, massive red letters that's shining throughout the whole room. And it's 7:30 in the morning. So what's up? Okay.
The app has
this is a customer representative situation. I
Okay.
have some problems.
Well, alright, so, cause these are the questions I need to write down, so they're not necessarily ones I can field, but, I'll write it up there in just a second, so app issues.
Yeah, so sometimes when you're doing you grant questions on the app, and you get to the end of the question set, it doesn't let you submit. at all.
Okay, is that in the U world or the Themis app?
In the U world.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
It
U
doesn't let
world,
you submit, so you have to like go into your, to U world on your computer, and you just re-enter the answers again, and then hit submit.
okay. What's the next question?
And then sometimes, this is all just UWorld problems. Sometimes
That's fine.
in UWorld, the answers, the number of like how many questions you've gotten correct and incorrect total doesn't match up to how many questions you've actually done.
Okay.
So I wonder what the discrepancy is. So I'm like, have I actually done 500 questions, or have I only done 460?
Okay.
Because sometimes one is more than the other.
So we recently fixed an issue about that on the admin end of things. And so if it's doing that on the student end of things, we need to know. So CC me when you do this so that I can also forward it to my admin in Chicago, and they'll also be able to, you know, when you have more people to the email, people have a tendency to work faster because they see people are watching. What's next?
There's more for everybody else.
Keep going, keep going.
I'll come back.
Oh, okay. What's up?
So from what I've noticed, there seems to be a discrepancy, or I guess differences across functions in the platform and the answers that they'll give. So for example, when it'll state the rule for adverse possession, it'll give a mnemonic of ocean. And in the outline sometimes, the online outlines on Themis, it'll say the mnemonic is echo. Or if you go into the flashcards, it'll say the mnemonic is anoche. So I'm wondering if, yeah, right?
Yeah.
As if I speak Spanish. That being said, I'm just wondering what's the functional difference between, or what's the reason behind different functions in Themis having those different mnemonics?
What works best for you?
Consistency.
I get it, but I mean, you know, we're creating something that's for everyone, and that's hard to pinpoint, you know, and if you're seeing differences, I can forward that to our content team to where they can create consistency. Does that make sense? Because sometimes they are, you know, we don't know everything that may have issues within the outlines or within the books, if there's typos, and so we try to correct that as quickly as possible, especially it's easier to do it whenever the material's online rather than in the printed material. So thankfully it's not in the printed material. But I can forward that if you wanna send me that email. You know, and that's my thing is sometimes the reason behind that is that some people learn better with one mnemonic, some people learn better with others. So I think Professor Kramer was in between TAP and PAT or something. What's up?
But substantively, all those rules are exactly the same. It's just a different order
Yeah,
in which
it's
to
just-
analyze it.
It's all the same. It's just, yeah, exactly.
No, I know that, the rule is the same, it's just the differences between memorizing.
For memorization, yeah, it's hard. And I'll send that, I'll forward that up on your behalf.
I'm curious, are you seeing the difference in those mnemonics between Themis and UWorld, or just within Themis itself?
So in my experience, it's across both UWorld and Themis, so I'm seeing it whenever, like, Themis assigns a practice set, not within UWorld, just like, here's your 34 questions of the day. It'll give a different rule statement than Themis will in the flashcards. And then in UWorld, it's another different answer as well.
Okay,
It's the same rule, like, to be clear, substantively, it's the same rule, but it's just doing it differently each time so that it makes it hard to track.
It's like they're two separate worlds, so they have their two separate.
Well, and that's, so, to be honest with you, COVID kind of threw a wrench into the transition. So Themis was bought by UWorld in March of 2021. So we haven't been able to we've initiated it and we've done it slowly. So we've done it with the 1L student, key essential books, and now we've done it with the 2 and 3 material, and we've just done the LLM program fully to UWorld to where we can open that 8 to 10 months in advance. So now we're transitioning the bar material over as well. What's up?
I may be doing it wrong, but is there
Sure.
a reason that you can't, there's certain things that you can't access in Flex Study to do ahead of time, like AQ2s or whatever it is?
Yeah, so the dated material, you can't open that early unless you've reached a certain threshold. If it's on a particular date, then you have to do it on that date.
Yeah.
If it is later on, like if it's the AQ2s, typically you have to have completed a certain amount of material in order to open that stuff.
In my experience, even with like an AQ2, even if you have done everything prior that is required to do the AQ2, it does not let you do it until that date comes up. Is that everyone's experience? Or?
So it's on the dated stuff, like I said, if it's got a date, it's not opening till that date.
But AQ2 doesn't have a date. That's just the next thing you have to do.
Yeah, okay. Then it's gonna be the material that has to have a certain threshold. And I'm not sure why, but the content creators are seeing a trend in certain data as to where, because we're even transitioning away from AQ2s into more nuanced stuff for next year. So, but the reason it's closed is, just based on how much material you're getting through. Does that make sense?
Not quite, but I'll,
No.
I'll take your word for it.
I'll write it down, and if you send me an email, and I'll get a better answer for you from our team up, but that's what I've been told is that AQ2s in particular, I don't necessarily like how it's not open beforehand in the Flex Study, but, in this situation, what we've been told is that you have to complete a certain threshold in order to have it open with the course.
For the AQ2s,
Yeah.
it says you have to wait 24 hours after your last lecture for it to open up.
Okay.
That's what the introductory to thing says about the AQ2s. You have to wait a certain amount of time for it to actually open up for you after you finish the last lecture for that unit.
And that's probably just due to the adaptive calendar updating through midnight. So. Do you have your hand up? No? Alright, I'm here. What's up?
So as someone who has just realized my timing's not the best, for essays, if you realize you're running out of time for whatever reason on bar exam day, and this is like your last essay, are we supposed to focus on the sections that we know the best and make sure those